I'm live. Okay. I'm really happy to be here today. The weather ended up being really good. Before I even begin, just want to remind everyone, early voting starts today, so just a reminder of that. So our story begins before this, but in about May of 1988, a group formed in New Paltz on race and relations. Several people were involved in that group, one of them being our councilman, who was David Strong. So in August of 1999, the study group started looking through some old clippings, and one of them was this one. Susan Timbrook, a colored woman, was buried on Friday last, April 29th, in the Colored People's Burial Ground, 1/4 of a mile north of this village. The funeral procession, which passed through this place, was the largest number of colored persons seen together here in some time, there being 13 wagons and about 40 people. So that started people questioning where was this site, what was going on, and a group formed of about 10 of us that met once a month to try and locate where this spot was. Now, Janet Salt, who owns this property, was wonderful and actually let us put this marker right here to commemorate the spot. And the date was 20 years ago. 10 years ago, actually, a woman that's going to speak in a few minutes, Tanya Marquette, was able to raise the money for this incredible thing that a local artist sculpted. But what I wanted to do, which was really important, I want to read something that the mayor then, Tom Nyquist, said on the day that we put this plaque up. As we stand here this afternoon, it strikes me how quickly the present becomes the past, and how people who strode upon this earth not that long ago can be so totally forgotten that even where they were buried becomes an issue. Only through the efforts of members of the African American Burial Ground Advisory Committee and other interested persons are we made aware that enslaved and free African Americans are buried here. It is only through their efforts that we are reminded that early New Paltz took part in the shame that was slavery. And in New Paltz, they were Black Americans unknown to us today who lived out their lives seeking what small happiness they could. In this prosperous New Paltz of today, it is perhaps impossible to envision what it must have been like when funerals commemorating their deaths took place near where we stand today. But it is good that we should be here once again and commemorate their deaths and, more importantly, their lives. And it is good that we should be here to unveil a permanent marker of their presence. Thomas Nyquist, Mayor, October 15th, 2000. So we have a list of wonderful people that are here to commemorate this day with us. One of them being one of the founders and the man that's been my mentor for more than 20 years, Professor Dr. A.J. William Myers. So I'm going to speak. AJ's having a little problem speaking today. AJ, can you stand here a minute just so people can see you? And then I'll say some of the words. Okay. So AJ sent me a beautiful email yesterday, and this is what he said to me. Hi, Susan. Given that my voice refuses to normalize and it's dipped a little bit today, would it be okay to put a short stopover at site to give honor to the many who gave themselves to pave the way through a deadly human engagement for we who followed in their footsteps? So let it resound across the rivers, mountains, and fields of vegetation. The lives of the enslaved did and do matter, and that heartbeat can still be heard and felt at this very moment. Yes, Black Lives Matter. Okay, now we'd like our mayor, Tim Rogers, to say some words.
Hey, you guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks everyone for getting together. I'm really humbled and appreciative of the efforts from so many individuals. Um, I love that this is an anniversary of when this sign was originally installed, and I'm incredibly pleased that members of our Village Historic Preservation Commission, as well as many others, and Susan, saw to it that this sign has been restored. And I don't think we can do enough things like we're doing today to recognize that we have a checkered past when it comes to Black Americans, and you know what has gone on historically, even in places like New Paltz. So thanks everyone for getting together, and let's keep having these important conversations. So I'll let you continue on with the program.
Okay, now I'd like to present Tom Olson, the chair of our Historic Commission.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and for those who will join at a later date via the link. First of all, thanks to Susan for organizing, and for all those that you represent, and AJ represents, and Tanya represents, who 20 years ago first memorialized this site, which we all know to be an approximation, which in itself says a great deal about why we're doing this and why we're concerned today. And who, under Tanya's guidance, 10 years ago, brought this beautiful commemorative bench to this area as well. As some of you may know, I represent the Historic Preservation Commission here in the village of New Paltz, and we most recently have had a hand in the restoration of the sign. And I wanted to thank my colleagues for acting very, very quickly. As soon as it was pointed out to us that this sign was in disrepair and that others in the area seemed to be in better repair, we responded very quickly to that present injustice. And in particular, we stripped down the sign, we repainted the sign, and I have to particularly thank my colleague and Deputy Chair Camilla Nagy, who did all of that painstaking lettering by hand with a tiny, tiny brush and a rag in her hand, and brought really an artist's touch to something that memorializes something that should never be forgotten in our community. I wanted to say briefly that historic preservation typically is about celebrating our past, mostly by valuing our architecture and our built environment of the past. But sometimes, as Mayor Rogers just pointed out, it's also about confronting our past and owning up to the mistakes and the injustices of the past. And in this case, of course, that's slavery, that's racial prejudice, that's institutionalized racism. And I think especially from a historic preservation point of view, it's the injustice of namelessness that comes with having unmarked graves and erasing so many lives of talent and so many lives of love and importance and skill. Signage matters. And I'm of course speaking mostly from the point of view of someone interested in historic preservation. Signage is a first line form of recognition. It's a window into the past, even if of course that window is cloudy and obscure and they're not sure that we're on the right site. That matters a lot less than the fact that we are on a site and we're doing this today, 20 years and 10 years later. So I'm very thankful to all of you who've gathered, particularly thankful to the brave people who 20 years ago and 10 years ago took the initiative to memorialize this spot. And also very thankful to the property owner who opened up her mind and her property to the commemoration of this site. So thank you all. I appreciate the chance to share a few words, and I look forward to hearing from others.
Next, I'd like to present Tanya Marquette, who was instrumental in getting this beautiful bench put here 10 years ago to the day. So it was October 24th, 2010. Take it away. Is this a good spot?
Yeah.
I'm filled with a lot of feelings right now. Susan, I really want to thank you so much for doing this. It has been a real sadness for me that in the last few years that people have not been able to organize to continue the annual commemoration of the site, which we did for many, many years. So I find this to be extremely important. And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all the other people that worked on identifying and putting this together for Maureen. As Susan mentioned before, I've been involved from the beginning. I've been involved for many, many years dealing with the issue of racism in this community and the history of slavery here. Actually, I met AJ at around 1970 something at a CAP committee meeting. Remember with Erdine Antonsen? Remember way back then? Do we remember that far back? And AJ started to pick up on doing historic research into the history of slavery in this community here, and has done some phenomenal work in documenting that over the years, and so in his books, which people really should avail themselves of. So my history on this subject goes back a very long ways in this community. The Race and Racism Study Group that developed did, as Susan mentioned, discover by just reading some old collected newspapers in the library, discovered that there was this site listed almost as a footnote to history. And we began to do our research, looking at maps, trying to identify just where it was. What we did discover is that this property next door, where the house is set so far back off the road, is where we think the main body of the grave site is located. And we conjectured that the house was set far back, because all of these are new houses here, and they were all built approximately at the same time. And we conjectured that they came across bones, and as opposed to declaring the finding, which would have interrupted their building, and they just set the house far, far back. Janet over here, we think some of the grave site might be on her property, but symbolically, she offered to sponsor our using the site, for this commemorative piece here. We raised money collectively. The committee, which consisted of people from the town, from the village, from community groups, from individuals, we raised money and put this sign up here. And I really need to thank the Historic Society for picking up and doing the preservation work, which is so critical. The bench came a little bit later, and again, the collective average raised money from many, many different sources. So I appreciate the credit being given to me, but I think I need to express a little more humility than that, because I wasn't the only one involved. And we did raise the money. I worked with Craig Shankles, who some of you may remember owned PDQ for many years, but he's a sculptor. He's a stone sculptor. And so I worked with him on the design, and we effected it. And he put the bench in. Now, the American Legion was also very much part of this history. They actually did the base of it. I worked with them on it, and I supervised putting in the base and the stone. And Craig then came in and set, the bench. You will notice the chain is a broken chain, which we did very intentionally to remind people that the history of enslavement was broken and needs to be broken historically. And we created the site using local material. It was very important to us that we used local stone and local materials and anybody who worked with us on it was a local person. So we felt very proud of it. And I was very, very happy to be part of it, and very, very happy to be part of today. And I do hope that the Historic Society will continue to maintain this, because I was very disappointed to find that it had deteriorated so much and that the town village was not taking, charge for it. So I guess what we need to do is to make sure that we institutionalize the responsibility for maintaining this. Otherwise, we'll have a repeat of history, I'm afraid, the wrong way. So it was very important to do this. I'm thrilled that it's here. I think that it was designed for longevity, and it will last forever if it's maintained. The people locally who have all participated have been wonderful. I was very thrilled to be part of that collective and collaborative, process of doing it. And I'm thrilled that, we're here again, able to commemorate such an important, part of our history that needs to not be forgotten. Thank you.
Now I'd like to have some words from the Reverend Jennifer Berry. Sorry, I think Jennifer Berry was not able to be here. Sorry about that. So now I'd like to introduce a very important person who has been here for many of the commemorations that we've had here. A woman by the name of Joan Miller, who about 15 years ago stepped into my office and my life, and we kind of discovered each other, have remained friends since then, and we go a while sometimes and then regroup again. But anyway, Joan Miller, I assume you're there. Yes, Joan's there. So I'm going to let you speak, and then I want to say a few words when Joan finishes. So Joan, you're on.
Okay. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me, to this meeting and all the persons involved in this commemoration celebration. Today, we pay tribute to the African American slaves who rest at this site. There was no knowledge of this site, and these ancestors were forgotten, but they left their footprints, and they were finally discovered. Over the years, many of the ancestors' footprints have been uncovered, such as the skull of the African slave, now interred at the Huguenot burial ground. Discovering my great-great-grandfather, Richard Oliver, a Civil War soldier assigned to Company K, 20th Regiment, U.S. Colored Infantry. He died in 1865 aboard the steamship USS Northern Lights while returning home to New Paltz from Louisiana, and was buried at sea. Annie Oliver, Richard Oliver's wife, whose house still stands on Broadhead. I was just informed recently that Habitat for the Humanities will be taking over the remodeling of this historic site. I owe much gratitude to them for their endeavor, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you next year at that location on Broadhead when this project is completed. And thank you again. And there were many, many African Americans who were part of this community. They did live in this community. They were the unseen members, but they left their footprints for us to tell their stories. Thank you. I have one more request. I ask that today everybody go out and vote. Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Joan. And again, thank you to everybody that came out today. Again, we didn't want a crowd. We just have a few people that are here. And I especially want to thank AJ, who came out here to be here today with us. Beautiful day. And I will again say what Joan said, please get out there and vote. Really important. November 16th, I'll be doing another talk about the history of enslavement in our community and people that were defiant and freed themselves. So that's November 16th. So I'll give you more information. Anyway, have a wonderful day, everybody. Glad you could join us.
Very quickly,
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, AJ wants to say something.
let's continue the fight. Good
Conti-
fight. Let's tell the story.
Continue the fight and tell the story.
Those who were before us
Who those are that were before us.
and creating a world in which we will continue to build. Those who come after us.
Say the first line
Continue
again.
to build
And continue to build
for those
for those
who come after us.
who come after us. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody for being here and all your stuff. I look forward to seeing you YouTube. Saying that